Thank you very much, Monica. And I would also like to just thank the organisers of this event for inviting myself and the ARDC to be able to come and speak to you about data management plans and considering the fair and care principles, and also to those participants in the room for coming along as well to kind of hear about a topic that might be slightly different to what they're used to in this seminar series. And also thank you for that really nice introduction. So to begin with, I would just like to do a brief acknowledgement of country. So we acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet, and we pay our respect to their elders past, present and emerging. For me, that is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation here in Sydney. I'd like to begin this presentation initially by telling you a little bit about the ARDC, because some of you might have heard of us and some of you maybe not. So as with most organisations, the ARDC has a specific strategy which encompasses a purpose and a mission. So the ARDC's purpose is to provide Australian researchers with a competitive advantage through data, while our mission is to accelerate research and innovation by driving excellence in the creation, analysis and retention of high-quality data assets. To support the ARDC in doing this, we have identified thematic research data commons, 3 key themes and areas of work that the ARDC are currently focusing their projects and supporting. These are people, planet, and HAS and Indigenous. So within the people thematic theme, we're very much looking at health and medical research data. While planet, it's the earth and environmental sciences data, and HAS and Indigenous is the arts and social sciences and humanities, as well as Indigenous work. So you might be asking what a research data commons is. So research data commons brings together people, skills, data, and related resources such as storage, compute, software, and models to enable researchers to conduct world research and data-intensive research. And so within the research commons, what we aim to do is to run programs that facilitate partnerships that ensure Australian researchers are internationally competitive through having access to high-quality data, data assets, platforms, infrastructure, policies, people, and the training to subsequently transform lives. And to support this, and which is underlying for the work of the ARDC, is our actual audiences, of which you are part of. You very much fall under the category of the researchers who we are primarily now reaching out to. The researchers are our key audience at present. So researchers may be from any discipline, they may be academic, but we're also trying to identify researchers within government and industry, particularly senior researchers. We also are working with the people who work with researchers. So these are very much providers of research, and these relate to universities and research institutions very much. And we have really good relationships with the various librarians and many of the research institutions and universities out and about in Australia. The final audience we work very closely with are our key stakeholders. These can also be seen as influencers with regards to research data management. So these are people like the Australian government and policy developers, as well as international organisations. So that was just a brief introduction to the ARDC. I will now move on to the actual content of this presentation, whereby I'll give a brief introduction of what I'll be speaking about, which will be looking at data management plans, their purpose as living documents, components of the plans, introducing the fair and care principles and how they can be integrated and utilised within data management plans, and then a bit of commentary on resources and support that could help you as you look at the development of your data management plans, and also whether you're looking at FAIR and CARE. So although we've had a little introduction to myself, I just thought I'd comment again and share a picture of myself and my cat. So I'm Robin, and I'm the manager of the engagements team at the ARDC. I have strong interests in preparation, management, and preservation of data, and I'm an advocate for the FAIR and CARE principles. I'd like to add a caveat that I'm actually still quite new to the whole concept of Indigenous research data and the CARE principles. So very much in this presentation, I'll be commenting on data management plans and really just giving an introduction to FAIR and CARE. So moving on, firstly, what are data management plans and why would you bother to create one? So a data management plan is a document that allows you to record intended and expected details related to the data that will arise from your research project. The next definition is from the ARDC document around data management plans, which states a data management plan is a living document for a research project which outlines data creation, data policies, access and ownership rules, management practices, management facilities and equipment, and who will be responsible for what. So quite a few components can be included. So the reason why you might want a data management plan really relates to the need to ensure good management of the data created by your project, ensuring reasoning for the data and its creation. Also, these days, data management plans have very much been seen as a mandatory requirement for research and for engaging and obtaining research funding from the funding bodies. So moving on to data management plans as living documents. This is very much a phrase that gets panned around with research data management plans, that they are living documents. They have a beginning, they have a middle, and they have a so-called end. So in the beginning, it's very important to plan early. So really consider the research question you're looking at answering within your research project. Think about what data might be part of it. What experiments are you going to be undertaking? What literature review will you be carrying out to actually obtain information that will subsequently support the research that you're doing? Make sure you document this and keep abreast of what your research is about. The middle component really is around when you're actually thinking about completing the content that's required for the actual physical plan. So getting down on paper in a system and being able to record and handle and manage the information that you've acquired, and making sure that regular updates are made to this document, because you might find that during your research project, you might start collecting some new data that needs to be recorded in the plan, or the actual experiment you're doing might change. The parameters might have changed. You would need to record that as well. And then the end component with regards to data management plan is very much related to using the information you've written about in your plan to support the next steps of the management of your data. This very much relates to potential sharing and reuse of your data, and whether you intend publishing the data in a journal or different matters such as your thesis, but also whether the information and the data you've collected might spark new collaborations and new research with other individuals and research groups out there. So sharing and reuse of your data is a component of the data management plan, and this could be seen as the end of your project and the end of the use of the plan, but as it is a living document, it could actually lead to new research as well. So you could use the plan in a continuous form. So just a few tools for the creation and support with data management plans. It can be stated that there's various tools that can be used to develop a data management plan. And it's very much your choice as to what approach you want to take. You could just create a simple Word document and use Microsoft tools where you just kind of use prose to describe the content of what you intend doing within your research project and the data that you intend creating. There's tools such as Jira, which are kind of a more data management and project management tool. Power BI could be used for visualizing information. There's also many software options out there as well. And one very popular package for creating a data management plan is DMP Online, which was created by universities in the UK and America. And this has specific headings and sections within the online tool that you're able to fill in and provide feedback on to accumulate the information for your plan. There's also software such as Fedora, which primarily is seen as a repository software tool, but it can also be utilized for the creation of data management plans. And this was the case at UNSW. When I worked there, we used to use Fedora for the data management plan, and then we moved to DMP Online. Also, that you could have a look on the web for general online management systems. There might be some bespoke options available, and alternatively, your university or institution might just develop a tool internally as well, utilizing the skills of their IT team. So looking at the components of a data management plan, these can vary, and it is very much dependent on what you want to capture and the complexity in which you want to make your plan and how detailed you want the plan to be. And it also can be dependent on what you've actually been asked to do when creating the plan, as potentially different funding bodies might have different requirements, for example, that might dictate what gets included in the data management plan. So the DCC, which is the Digital Curation Centre based in Glasgow, Scotland, has a useful checklist for detailing what to capture within your data management plan. And the areas that they highlight include administrative data, so the actual data collection, so how you intend collecting your data, any documentation around the metadata that can be assigned to the data that you're collecting, so the descriptions of the data. Ethics and legal compliance is a very important component within a data management plan. You're likely to have to get ethics clearance for much of the research that gets undertaken, and within your plan you can actually make links out to your ethics clearance and ethics forms, but also comment on whether you're working with any, say, Indigenous data or human or animal data. Storage and backup is also important. How will you intend to store the data during and at the end of the project, and the need for backup to make the data safe and secure. Any commentary around selection and preservation, your thoughts around data sharing. This very much relates towards the end of your project. Do you intend sharing the data through like an online platform? Will you be publishing the data? Should you be thinking about what licensing to apply to the data if you do intend sharing it? And then there's also commentary around responsibilities for the handling and management of the data and any additional resources that support the data you're collecting. So that was a quick overview around what data management plans are. I'll now move on to the FAIR and CARE principles. So be fair and care. So the FAIR principles, which FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So FAIR is a principles approach to data management. It promotes elements to help ensure good data management. And it can be said that researchers spend considerable time, money, and effort collecting and interrogating data. So making your data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable will help to maximise the impact of that investment, including gaining more citations for your data set. So why is FAIR data important? FAIR benefits researchers and research organisations in the following ways. It helps to gain maximum potential from the data asset that you've been creating. It will help increase the visibility and citations of research, improve the reproducibility and reliability of the research. It also helps you to stay aligned with international standards and approaches. It could potentially help attract new partnerships with researchers, business, policy, and broader communities, and also enable new research questions to be answered. But what is FAIR data? So FAIR provides a useful framework for thinking about sharing data in a way that will enable maximum use and reuse. There has been a document published in 2016 called the FAIR Guiding Principles for Scientific Data Management and Stewardship. The link is in the presentation here, and I'm sure the presentation will be shared with you afterwards, so you'll be able to check the links I'm sharing out afterwards. But this document specifies that FAIR data is very much related to and used for supporting knowledge, discovery and innovation, both by humans and machines. It enables to support data and knowledge integration. It supports new discoveries through the harvest and analysis of multiple data sets and output, promotes sharing and reuse of data. That's very much the R within FAIR, so reuse. It can be applied across multiple disciplines, even those that involve sensitive data, and it helps data and metadata to be machine readable. So just looking a bit more at the FAIR principles as applied to kind of your data management plan. So these elements and processes can be described when completing specific sections of a data management plan, such as commenting on ethics will impact the reusability of the data, and describing documentation can touch upon interoperability of the data. Also, within the findable section, it mentions the need and importance of persistent identifiers to be added to the data that you're creating and the metadata. A DOI, for example, can help to make your research much more findable, and this should be something that's considered when writing the description of the data that you're intending to collect in your data management plan and how you intend the data to be accessed after the end of your project. With regards to kind of accessibility, it speaks about the importance of data being deposited in a trusted repository. This is a question that is often asked within a data management plan related to where will your data be housed during the research project and after the research project. So commentary around if you intend using a data repository will help to cover the aspect related to accessibility. With regards to interoperability, it very much speaks about the use of vocabularies and common languages to describe your data. So look out when thinking about your research, whether there are standards and vocabularies that could be applied to the description of your data and the metadata, as this will help to describe its interoperability as well as its accessibility. And as already mentioned, kind of the reusable side of FAIR is very important within your plan to kind of have comments on the impact that your data might have when it comes to reusability. So whether your data is sensitive data, it's good to be able to describe that, as that will have an impact on the reusability. And also, as previously mentioned, think about whether any licensing in the future might need to be applied to the data that you're collecting, and document that in the plan as well. So that was an introduction really to the FAIR component and FAIR within data management plans. I'll now move on to the area around CARE and data management plans. So CARE is another principles-based tool, and it stands for collective benefit, authority to control, responsibility, and ethics. The CARE principles describe how data should be treated to ensure that Indigenous governance over the data and its use are respected. The CARE principles reflect the crucial role of data in advancing Indigenous innovation and self-determination. They ensure that data movements, like the open data movement, whatever they're advocating and pursuing, respect the people and purpose behind the data. So the origins really of the CARE principles are stated within this paragraph. So the current movement towards open data and open science does not fully engage with Indigenous people's rights and interests. Existing principles within the open data movement, such as FAIR, primarily focus on characteristics of data that will facilitate increased data sharing among entities while ignoring power differentials and historical context. The emphasis on greater data sharing alone creates a tension for Indigenous peoples, who are also asserting greater control over the application and use of Indigenous data and Indigenous knowledge for the collective benefit. So looking at the CARE principles a bit more closely, this diagram illustrates them quite clearly and provides a brief commentary around what each of the components include. So the CARE principles for Indigenous data governance are people and purpose orientated, reflecting the crucial role of data in advancing Indigenous innovation and self-determination. So I'd just like to break the CARE principles down a bit further for you, because they could be something that's quite new to you. So collective benefit very much relates to data ecosystems shall be designed and function in ways that enable Indigenous people to derive benefit from the data. So this very much is looking at the following 3 points related to for inclusive development and innovation, for improved government and citizen engagement, and for equitable outcomes. With regards to authority to control, Indigenous people's rights and interests in Indigenous data must be recognised and their authority to control such data be empowered. So this is looking at recognising the rights and interests of the people with regards to data, application of data and its governance, and so data, as I say, data for governance, but also governance of the data. The third aspect is responsibility, which is quite straightforward. So those working with Indigenous data have a responsibility to share how those data are used to support Indigenous people's self-determination and collective benefit. It's very much looking at the reasoning for responsibility to create positive relationships and for expanding capability and capacity of the data, and also describing and providing information around Indigenous language and worldviews. And the final component of CARE is ethics. Indigenous people's rights and well-being should be the primary concern at all stages of the data life cycle and across the data ecosystem. So ethics is particularly important when it comes to minimizing harm and maximizing benefit. It also relates to ensuring that there is justice, and also ethics has an impact on the future use of the data that's being collected. So that's kind of outline what the CARE principles principally are and statements around them, but applying them to kind of data management plans, you can kind of think a bit more broadly around their application and think more about kind of Aboriginal cultural connections and thinking a bit more around Indigenous data and Indigenous governance, and have an understanding around the fact that Indigenous knowledge and data is very complex, and it really needs to be considered in a very thoughtful way, and you need to be aware of the data and the information that you could be collecting or describing within your data management plan. So Indigenous data and information, there's a lot of impact around the way the data is collected and subsequently stored. This will need to be described explicitly and in detail within your data management plan. When working with Indigenous data, it's also very important to ensure you've obtained the relevant permissions that are needed to be able to utilize that data. That's also information that can be added to the data management plan. So names, addresses, information around who has given you permission to use the data. Access to the data is very important as well, and how it subsequently can be shared. And it's important to provide commentary around these aspects. Also, there's another area within kind of Indigenous data and linking with the care principles, and that's the TK and BC labels. So the traditional knowledge and biocultural labels, these can also add additional weighting and management around the data that you're collecting and could be described in your plan. So just also touching a bit on the diagram in this slide, the aspect of country is really important when kind of thinking about Indigenous data and working with Aboriginal communities. Country is very important to them, so you have that in the back of your mind. If you're working especially in kind of environmental, earth and environmental data, country is very important. Also, understanding personal identity. This can subsequently influence whether you are actually going to be allowed to obtain the data from a Indigenous community. You need to understand the people you're potentially working with, and being able to kind of document this in your plan will subsequently be important. Also from this diagram, the aspect to do with cultural values, beliefs and practices, I think is also important to be aware of when thinking about how to construct your data management plan from the perspective of working with Indigenous data and subsequently the care principles. So just a few comments around FAIR and care together. So the care principles complement the existing FAIR principles by encouraging open and other data movements to consider both people and purpose in their advocacy and pursuit. Both sets of principles can be referred to when writing a data management plan, and they provide clear concepts that relate and support good data management. It can be stated that FAIR is very much around the process of data management, while care brings about the importance of people and purpose around the data that's being collected. But ultimately, it's also very important for you to understand your actual research project that you're doing and its ultimate goal, as this will influence the way in which you feel you need to or want to incorporate FAIR and or care within the planning of your research project, and subsequently the information that you include in your data management plan. So just a few more slides around kind of the data management plan side and incorporation of FAIR and care. So you're probably aware, you might have seen these diagrams before. They're from the Digital Curation Centre, highlighting the components of the research data management lifecycle, of which the creation of a data management plan is part of. But also within the data management lifecycle, FAIR and care can be integrated and applied to support the other aspects that come up within the life cycle, such as shown in the diagram on the left. So data search and reuse, publication, data storage. These are elements that FAIR especially can support with, but also the consideration around care as well should be alluded to when thinking about these elements as well. So this is quite an exhaustive list of components that could be included in your data management plan. I've highlighted in bold those that I think are particularly prevalent and important for fair and care, where you would be able to describe aspects of the principles. So the first one being kind of having a backup strategy. So that really relates to ensuring that the data that you have is stored correctly. So within FAIR, that's kind of ensuring the accessibility of the data. But for care, backup is very important because it will give Indigenous communities a sense of that you're being responsible for the data that they are providing you with, and responsibility being one of the care principles, and it's ensuring that the data that's being provided is being handled and managed correctly. Also, outline of the data being created. This is very much within the data management plan, the kind of descriptive section where you can really describe the data that you're going to be creating during your project. And within this, from a fair and care perspective, you can kind of look at and comment on, right, I will make my data findable by adding a DOI. I'll make it accessible by putting it in this repository that the university has. And from a care perspective, I'll ensure I've undertaken my I've got my ethics agreement to cover off the ethics component and aspects to do with how the data is likely to be controlled as well. Metadata is important when it comes to describing your data, and being able to comment on that within your data management plan is of importance as well. Ownership, access, and security of the information. This is a key component when it comes to fair and care. It's important to make sure that the data can be accessed. That's part of fair. And security is of great importance when it comes to handling Indigenous data. But also it's important to say and state who is the actual owner of the data. In the case of kind of a lot of Indigenous research, the Indigenous elders will maintain ownership of the data, and you have gained permission to actually use the data. Data organization and naming conventions. This will support with access, so access and findability of the data, making sure that it is named in an according way will help people to locate it, which links to kind of data storage locations. These need to be controlled and managed accordingly to make sure that the data is safe. And kind of one of the last ones I'll just comment on here relates to kind of data sharing, publishing, archiving, licensing. This is very much relates to kind of the reuse component within the FAIR principles, and also within the collective benefit side of care, because by being able to kind of publish and share the Indigenous data, you're bringing benefit to an Indigenous community, for example. Just want to comment briefly on kind of what support is out there that can help you with regards to data management planning, fair and care. So the following links here provide support related to data management plans and fair and care. As I mentioned, I'll make sure these slides are shared with you so you can check these links out. So there's various checklists out there that comment on what can be included in a data management plan, and this can help support you in understanding what questions you need to ask when collecting your data and that side of things. There's various tools out there to support and documentation around FAIR and the FAIR principles. The ARDC has created a FAIR data assessment tool, which will allow you to assess how fair your data actually is. So you'll be able to see whether you can comment on if you have been assigning a DOI, if you are using a repository, and this will give you a score of how fair your data is, and also a report highlighting elements that will help increase and point out areas where you need to improve the fairness of your data. For care, there's various documentation, but there's also an Indigenous data governance toolkit, that can be accessed to kind of give a bit more guidance around the management of Indigenous data. As mentioned, I did comment on the TK and BC labels. These can be a tool to be applied and support Indigenous data management, but also speak to your institution, particularly the library or the research office. They're likely to be able to help you with the creation of data management plans, but also speak to other parts of your institution, such as the legal office. They're likely to be able to support with aspects to do with ethics and potentially kind of governance of Indigenous data, and also look online and around for the various data management policies that the institution is likely to have, because these will also support and guide you when it comes to the management of your data. And finally, so the ARDC can also provide a lot of support when it comes to the development of data management plans and the understanding of fair and care. And the ARDC has a resource hub, which can really help provide guidance for you and the projects that you're working on. So the slide here just illustrates the 5 areas of expertise, I guess, that the ARDC has, where we can support you with various components that might crop up with regards to kind of your data management planning, regards to fair, regards to care, but just your research in general. So there's the policy and procedure aspect. So this is very much looking at data governance and sensitive data. We've got a team who are very much interested in architecture and systems. And this is where the data management planning tools come in and support for data management plans and also data repositories. We can support with that. We do have a data repositories community of practice. And I can mention we also have a sensitive data community of practice, which if you're interested in joining, you can come along to learn a bit more about those aspects. And there is also a research data management community of practice as well. And a popular topic they do discuss is data management plans. There's also compute and analysis. So this is very much looking at research software, the tools that ARDC can provide, such as Nectar and Jupyter and notebooks, those sorts of things. Also, we're very aware and very interested in one of our key areas is the fair data principles. So ensuring and supporting you to make data findable. We do a lot of work around persistent IDs, so DOIs, RAIDs for projects, RAWs for institutions, that sort of thing. And also looking at the aspects of vocabularies, as mentioned earlier, as being important for interoperability. Vocabularies we also have a community of practice for as well, and also the importance of data licensing. And finally, we have a skills development team who can really support you in aspects of training, building communities, and also looking at what skills might support you or your institution with your work. Just finally, before I finish up, I'd just like to do a little plug here for the ARDC, and just to make you aware that next year in 2025, it will be the International Data Week being held in Brisbane, and the ARDC are heavily involved in sponsoring this event. It's very much going to be looking at trusted research data, driving innovation and a better world. And it'd be great to see any of you at this event in Brisbane next year. And more details of it can be found on the ARDC website. So I think I will leave it there. Thank you very much again for letting me speak. I do recommend that you subscribe to the ARDC Connect newsletter by scanning that QR code, or do access the ARDC website at ardc.edu.au, where you can learn much more about the work that we do and the support that we can provide for you, not just in data management plans, fair and care, but other aspects related to your research. And we'd also be really excited to have you involved in the Research Data Commons that we're undertaking. So you can learn more about people, planet, and Hassan Indigenous on the website. And if you do have any questions or anything, we do have a contact us email address, which is contact@ardc.edu.au, and there's Twitter and Instagram as other people have. So thank you very much, and I hope you found that useful, and I will try my best now to answer any questions people might have. I'll stop sharing my screen. Thank you.